Welcome back, everybody. You saw in the last video that I created a compliant mechanism that allows you to grab onto a penny and then release it appropriately. So I'm pretty happy with the way that turned out. And this is what it looks like when it's actually put in that rotational coin slider that I've been talking about over the last few videos. And you can see that that compliant mechanism works in all three positions now. So that's pretty exciting. I was really happy with the way this works. I can actually show you that it holds on to a penny pretty well. We can put a penny in there. Once we push that button down, we can hold it. It's in there pretty solidly. I can shake this pretty well and it won't fall out. And when we rotate through these positions and we have a cog, we can push on that and it will release. In my original design, I had this rough idea for the coin slider, and it had a gear in the center here that we could use to rotate the whole mechanism. I was initially thinking about doing that with a clutch mechanism, and I built this little prototype here so that I could show how that works. I was planning on showing you this in this video, how this was planning on working. The idea was to allow this to rotate only in one direction, and that outer gear would be stuck in the other direction. In that way, I was thinking I could use only one stepper motor to run the whole robot. My idea was to reduce the part count, but really, we're not there yet. I don't think we need to worry about that quite yet, but you could see how this clutch mechanism was going to work. It allows the coin slider to work in one direction, and then the sorter to rotate in the other direction without that moving. And the way that would work was this gear on the center of this piece would mesh with this gear here, and we could actually use a stepper motor. So once those two are meshed up, you can see that I can rotate these through the three positions just by rotating this piece down here. If I'm rotating this, you can see that actually rotates the coin slider. So that was my big plan, was to use that clutch mechanism to rotate this and make sure that this rotated one way and the coin sorter rotated in the other. So you can see again how that works. And I think that would have worked pretty well, but again, for right now it's just a little too complicated, and I think I can get rid of a lot of this mess by just adding another stepper motor, so that's great. But at any rate, what I'm trying to show here is that I wanted to incorporate this mechanism into whatever design I had for pushing down on these cogs. And the first one that I came up with was this. And you can see that clutch mechanism still slides into place there. I can put the coin slider into position, and I can rotate that. That'll still have that clutch piece working here. And then I'll allow the coin slider to rotate in only one direction. That was the theory. Now, as far as the timing of the grabbing and dropping of the coins is concerned, you can see, I highlighted this with a black Sharpie here, but you can see that this part here sticks out just a little bit further than the rest of the edges here. So my theory was to put the coin slider into position here. And when it goes through these cogs, you can see that it actually pushes down on that area. Let's see if we can find a better. Maybe if we do it over here on this piece, you can actually see. You can see that when this is in that position, this cog is actually pushing down on this whole mechanism. And that's how we would actually pick up a coin in that position. So you can see that there's a pretty big gap here right now, but when I rotate that past this cog, that tightens up. That means that this gap in here has opened up enough to allow a penny to slide in there. And once it's through there, the penny is firmly held, and it can rotate into the next camera position. So in that position, it is just hanging out in space, and you can see that on the other side. Like there's nothing holding the penny other than this coin sliding mechanism. When it gets to the third position, that would be the coin sorter position. It will push down on this cog again, and then it will just drop it through that center hole. So that is how that was supposed to work. And I was pretty excited when I got to see this. So as far as the timing is concerned, we want to make sure that we are pushing down hard enough on this cog to actually pick up a penny and make sure that we actually have enough space there to pick up a penny. But then we want to make sure that there's enough room for it to return and positively hold on to the penny without letting go of it, because of that coin studio position that I was talking about before. We don't want that to actually fall when it's in the camera studio position. If it fell in this position, it would kind of be a disaster. That would fall on top of one of the cameras, and that would not be great. So at any rate, that took a lot of work to get that distance set up properly. And I actually had to go through a bunch of different iterations, which you can see here on the table. Basically, what I needed to do was to set up different distances from the center here to the outer edge. And in this case, you can see that that's 124 millimeters. And then you can also see that that's too loose. So that's a problem. And I can also show you what that looks like with the mechanism that's too loose. When it rolls past this cog, there's really no push there. It doesn't do anything to actually hold or release the penny in those positions. So obviously that's too loose, and this just slides by there way too effortlessly, and there's no connection there. But what I did was basically just increase that amount by 0.5 millimeter each time until I got that pressure correct. So you can see that I stepped up to 124.5 millimeters. You can see that we're starting to engage with those cogs, but we're still not getting very much movement down here at 125 millimeters. We see a little bit more engagement. It's starting to close that gap a little bit more, but we're still not seeing enough. But to make a long story short, I stepped up by 0.5 millimeter each time, and what I ended up with was 126.5 millimeters for that distance, and that seems to be just about right, as we demonstrated before. When we rotate that by one of the cogs, there is significant movement here, and that opens up the gap here so that we can actually grab onto a penny. And when we don't have a cog, like over the camera studio here, it works pretty well because it will have room to fully disengage, and it will actually hold on to the penny in this position like we showed before. The other problem that I ran into, though, was that there's a lot of friction in this system. If you look at the way the cog timings work on this, you can see that 2 of these are being pushed down at exactly the same time. So these have maximum pressure on them both at the same time, and that makes this extremely difficult to turn. So I knew that we needed to do some things to kind of loosen that up a bit. And the first thing I came up with was to try to change where the position of these cogs was so that they weren't pushing down at their max deflection at exactly the same time. So in the next iteration, you can see that when this is at max deflection, this no longer is at max deflection. That reduces the friction of that connection significantly. But as I got thinking about this, and as you look at this under here, you can now grab this more fully. When you try to rotate that from here, there is still a significant amount of friction. It's very, very difficult to turn this. So that amount of friction, even though we're not pushing these down at the same time, made me think that maybe there's a better way to do this. The one thing that I noticed about this was that a lot of these intricate parts were getting caught on the gears underneath here. They were getting caught under here. That was making it very difficult to turn. So if we pull this out, one of my ideas for reducing friction in this system was to just cover up those gears with a piece of paper temporarily, just to see how that works. You can still see that we have an engagement with the gears here. And when I put that back in, this now rotates much more easily. That allowed these intricate parts to slide over those gears more easily. It's still pretty hard to turn from that center post. It still gets caught. So I think that's just a product of trying to turn this from a very small gear here in the middle. But, I soon realized that having such a thin part there was not a long-term solution. So rather than using a piece of paper, I just printed this plastic a little bit better, and I created something I'm calling a coin shelf. It's just a thinner version of that part that I was showing before, and that incorporates what I was trying to do with the paper mask there. It just allows this to roll over everything without getting caught up in the gears. This should cover the gears and all those other things that I had going on, and that will make it a lot easier for this to rotate. I think that's enough for this video, but in the next video, I think what we really need to discuss is a better way to turn this. As you can see, it's much easier to turn this if we do it from this outside edge. And I think that's going to be the key in the next video. We're going to figure out a way to attach a gear to the outside rim of this, and we'll be able to turn that from the outside edge rather than trying to control it all from this small gear here in the center. So stay tuned. In the next video, we're going to talk about that outer gear and a way to turn this and use mechanical advantage to create more torque. So I'm kind of excited about that. Stay tuned for the next video, and I'll show you how that gear and pulley system is going to work. Thanks, everyone.